Hi, so I am going to continue on with these short 10-minute videos. That first 10-minute videos pretty much got me through, one paragraph. But I'm going to go ahead and quote what I thought was relevant here from, again, continue on, March 30th, 2009. My story, I knew nothing about scale and daguerreotype. I did not see this picture before. I didn't know they were possibly, all I knew was about the Carter photograph, and I knew nothing about it other than that my smart mama was like, some people think that's a photograph of him, but smart people, like just literally, smart people know it's a photo of a painting or drawing. It's not really of a man. And me as an artist, I'm like, that doesn't match. This just doesn't match the dimensions of a human face. I've been drawing faces since I was 10. I was in high school at the time. Love drawing faces. I knew that wasn't proportional enough to be a real photo of a man. And you'll see as I get through these 10-minute videos, it's not. It's not. Okay, but I'm not going to read this a whole lot more, but I'm just finding this. But this is how I found it, because I understood what this guy said, and I found him and contacted him, and he likes money, and I paid him some money, 8 years later. He's like, oh, someone's going to pay me money for this? Okay. Well, I'll just give it to her. I didn't think I would ever find it, but anyway. But this is quoting him from 2009. I knew nothing, no connection to this guy. Like I was saying, if you did a check on me in every email I've ever had or my whole life or anyone that ever knew me, I didn't know this guy in 2009, didn't contact him until 2017. But these were the things I found interesting. I knew it matched the death mask, and here I am reading this. This photo comes from an album that Smith ID'd photos, and again, I did not take out his misspellings or his grammatical errors. Does that make someone incapable of realizing it looks like the death mask in Joseph Smith's sons? That's what they claim on the website. Like, by their grammar we shall know you. Oh, how do you have a testimony of Joseph Smith? Okay. This photo comes from an album that had Smith ID'd photos in it. I listed a few cartridge CDVs. I didn't know what that was until I bought it. Anyway, like this one, looked to be copies of daguerreotypes. He turned out to be right. You'll see, I didn't agree with this until 2020. They did well at auction and covered the cost of this album. So they're paper photos copied from daguerreotypes. So he is a collector. He knows that much. They did well at auction and covered the cost of this album. The comment about Mormon stuck. So he is, I promise you, not a member of the church. I've seen his Facebook page. He's just not, mostly because my mother's sister is in Washington, D.C. High Council, most likely, RLDS. And so I started to look into this photo, which at the time I'm beginning to believe is Joseph Smith. He was already collecting photos before this. He didn't just, but then it became a goal, I think, later on to try to find one. I do think that they convinced him it couldn't have been or something. I don't know. He didn't tell me that, but he didn't I don't see evidence he tried to sell this past 2009 until I contacted him. All the photos in the album follow. That's what got me. The Joseph Smith shelf, some from Vermont. I don't know if he was being honest about it, saying diviner on there. I don't know what happened to this older guy. That is interesting, diviner, and it said from Vermont, I guess. And I'm also trusting this Jared guy of quoting him right. I don't know if he did, So that's where this is a little bit sketchy. And I have been selling others at auction the past 2 weeks. Some really interesting ones from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Missouri, Illinois. But the Missouri picture, I did see one of a woman I talk about here on my blog on this website that said Mrs. Smith, and it was printed in Missouri. And I just was like, oh, what does that matter? I didn't realize, that Joseph Smith III and Alexander both spent the last years of their life, and so them and their wives all ended up in Missouri eventually. Not most of their lives, but the end of their lives. And so if one of their wives had a photo printed in Missouri and said Mrs. Smith, or someone later, or a descendant or one of their children, that's interesting. And I wish I knew what her face looked like. But anyway, mid-2017, I researched trying to find basically I was just really concerned. I kept feeling, and even said in my videos, I'm like, he's going to throw it away. He's going to throw this away. Who has this? And I'm going to be all spiritual about this. I do think that was the spirit, and I do think he was going to throw it away. But I just did comparisons. That's all I was doing in summer 2017. But then I bought it. And then you'll see as I'm explaining here, I need to authenticate it. I'd never done that before. I'm not a collector if you talk to me or to my friends or my family. This is the first old photo I've owned. I worked for I did some photography, but I didn't, photography wasn't even a class I took in college, authenticating an old cartridge of Z was like a big deal for me. So the first step was really seeing if it was 1840s clothing, which I actually show later on in the website. But the back of it, this is what is interesting. So that's why I'm starting with this, is it said Newark, Illinois, J.S. Bibbins. It took me a long time to see why this was a big deal and why that was the name Bibbins in Illinois. But not being a daguerreotype did throw me. I was kind of depressed when I held it. I'm like, oh, it's not a daguerreotype. I found it was cartridge of Z. Those weren't patented till after Joseph Smith died. But then I found Spirit, the Lord, told me, look up Emma Smith's photograph, and I found her. She had a cartridge of Z paper that was copied from an 1845 daguerreotype. And again, that took me till 2019 to know that. I had doubted that. And the fact that there were things I didn't know is, I see that's actually a good thing if anyone's doubting the authenticity here. I really am just figuring all this out as I go, but there's similar paper style, even the background. I'll talk about that later on here. But Newark, trying to focus on Newark, was a location that Joseph Smith's presidential campaign in May 18th, 1844. So if you look at Joseph Smith papers, you'll see Bibbins was 22. So you'll see my earliest videos, I'm like, oh, maybe he printed it off. And maybe they just had this piece of paper and glued it to a cartridge of Z. I just didn't know. But George Albert Smith was the one who traveled to Newark. There was a branch at a state conference. They were also doing the presidential bid. So this was near, I think Chicago was starting to blow up, but for some reason Newark, where a lot of the members were, but that's just where they ended up, and I won't go into everything I read. I was just really trying to understand. I love biographies, so it's developing a love of history and loving researching this, having motivation, being a curiosity. It's just quenched my curiosity. I never realized I could get into history. Anyway, still going to keep this at 10 minutes. But I grew up in the church. I didn't know much about Joseph Smith's sons, Our LDS Church. I didn't know where they'd lived. We didn't hear hate about them or anything. We aren't like that. I mean, if, I'm sure there might be some seminary teacher out there or someone who's going to be a jerk, but our lesson manuals say don't do that. We don't do lesson manuals on hating on the Catholic Church or anyone, Anyway, but if you look up Newark in Illinois, it took me months. So if you watch my videos, I knew nothing about this. And the fact that the previous owner knew nothing about this too, I think is key to know. He is not a Mark Hoffman, and he never had any other photos of any other famous people, but I do think he was right on a few people. Well, this one. 10 miles away from the son, Joseph Smith III. I didn't know this for a long time after I owned it. Okay. Plano, Illinois. And so I have anything underlined, takes you to a website. You can go to Google Maps and see that Plano is just 10 miles away. But you see, here's the Plano Church, 1861. So it was April it was around April that Joseph Smith III became the leader of the reorganized Church of Christ Latter-day Saints. A lot of them were members that just, in my opinion, I'm starting to realize from reading these journals, it just, they're Chicago, and then all the saints are being persecuted are near the Mississippi. They are quite a ways away. And the members weren't all in one place. There's this misconception that they were. But I think they were not being persecuted. And I think they just had it good there and just stayed. And they knew Joseph. Quite a few of them actually knew Joseph Smith. Taught and lived plural marriage. And a lot of them were okay with it. But anyway, that's what some RLDS people are finding out as their own historians. Try to figure out, what happened with the son. but he did live there from 1866 to 1881. But the Saints he ran, he was working on the Saints Herald. So yeah, he did live in Plano. This is the Community of Christ. It used to be called the Reorganized Church of Christ Latter-day Saints. This is their official website. And so I'm going to try to wrap this up. But yeah, here's this. I'm going to show you this connection really quick here. Okay, George Albert Smith is in Newark, May 18th, 1844. This is Joseph Smith Papers. You're not familiar with this. This is Joseph Smith's journals. Sometimes scribes, sometimes they're copying newspaper. But they were there. There was a branch. Okay, so this is what's key. I'm going to show you a connection here. George Albert Smith. Okay, so I can't show you and give you internet links to the journal of Joseph Smith III because I bought the book. You have to, sometimes some of this stuff you have to actually go buy the book. So yeah, Joseph Smith III right here. Here's that connection. It doesn't move there till 1866, but 1860 October. He's in Plano. I mean, he's in Kendall County, Illinois, which Newark and Plano, Illinois, are both in the same county of Kendall County. And so here's what he says. Fall 1860 semi-annual conference was held October 6th on the premises of Israel L. Rogers, 4.5 miles south and a little east of Sandwich. Page 80 of the Memoirs of President Joseph Smith III. This is page 82. Brother Rogers' farm was located on the Fox River, a few miles from Millington. It was a region in which George A. Smith, William O. Clark labored extensively in the early days of the church. And to him, this is the early days, because they're writing this, actually, I think, probably in like 1910. Okay. A lot of his entries, I'm just telling you about the Memoirs of Joseph Smith III, are right before he died. So it literally is like 1910. And he's talking about early days, like, yeah, 1840 is a long time ago. And so here you go. This is from Google Maps. There's Sandwich, a little bit east, south, near Millington, across the Fox River. There's Newark. They're like 2 miles apart. They're right next to each other. And actually, so it was October 1860. He's in this area. And then J.S. Bibbins actually dies here, but this is where he did end up living, was in Plano, because that ended up being where they were publishing the like how they're explaining here, just so you know. The Saints Herald. Okay. The Plano Church headquarters. Plano was home to the Herald Publishing House and numerous publications, including the Saints Herald. But if you read the memoirs, I give a page number here, I believe. But where he states, I moved here to Plano, Illinois, to run the Saints Herald. Even though he was their prophet and their leader, yeah, but still, like that October conference, 1860, he's already in Kendall County. He's already, even though he's not, so someone might say, oh, well, he didn't live there till 1866, and it's 1860's corrective deed. I mean, that's only 4 years that you had for this to be printed, or someone's trying to be a negative Nancy, but oh no, the year 1860, and there actually is evidence that J.S. Bibbins was working as an artist, and then I do see there are other records stating artist, photographer. This one just specifically says artist for 1860 for Big Grove, and then you got Elisha, remember that name? Elizabeth, wife Alice, mother 69, going on there. So I'm starting out the Providence, because to me that is really important. So I'm going to try to, this is a little over 10 minutes, but I'm going to keep going through and showing you the evidence that I have. We're actually probably jump into it back right here, actually. Have a good day.